The long reach of the past. The case of John Arthur Getreu. The quiet morning in Hayward, California, on a crisp autumn day in November 2018, held a deceptive stillness. The air, typically brisk with the promise of a clear day, felt heavy with unspoken anticipation, carrying the subtle scent of dew-kissed asphalt and the distant, muffled hum of suburban life. At 74 years of age, John Arthur Getreu, an elderly homeowner whose life appeared meticulously ordinary from the outside, stepped out onto his neatly paved driveway, a common expanse typical of the unassuming neighborhood. He emerged from his modest, well-maintained house, a structure that blended seamlessly with its surroundings, completely unaware that the seemingly casual encounter unfolding before him was an elaborate and meticulously orchestrated ruse. An undercover officer, dressed in nondescript plain clothes to maintain the fragile illusion, stood by a parked vehicle poised to initiate a conversation about a supposed fender bender. This staged scenario, carefully designed to draw Getreu out of his home without suspicion, was the final critical step in an investigation that had spanned more than 4 decades, an arduous pursuit of justice now poised to close in on a profound secret meticulously buried beneath layers of time and mundane existence. The subtle turn of events, initiated with such quiet, calculated precision, was about to irrevocably unravel a life carefully constructed on a foundation of hidden darkness. As John Getreu, with an air of mild inconvenience, approached the undercover officer, a concealed team of deputies, moving with a controlled and synchronized professionalism that bespoke years of training, emerged from their strategically hidden positions. Their movements were precise, almost choreographed, as they converged upon the unsuspecting man. They initiated a routine pat-down, a standard procedure conducted with practiced efficiency, their hands sweeping expertly over his clothing before gently but firmly escorting him towards the open rear passenger door of a waiting police vehicle. The cruiser, a dark, unassuming sedan, sat parked quietly on the curb, its tinted windows offering no glimpse into the controlled, sterile environment within. John settled into the seat, his demeanor remarkably calm, an almost unsettling detachment about him. He even offered a comment to the deputies, seemingly commending them for their clever, deceptive tactic in getting him to step outside his home. He had not yet been formally informed of the true, profound reason for his arrest, the specific decades-old murders that had brought them to his door, but an immense, long-held secret, carefully guarded through the relentless passage of nearly half a century, was on the very verge of being irrevocably exposed. The silence inside the vehicle, once the door clicked shut, seemed to amplify the impending revelation, the weight of a hidden past pressing in around him. Months prior to this quiet morning apprehension, a dedicated team of cold case investigators in Santa Clara County, driven by an unyielding commitment to justice for forgotten victims, had embarked on a painstaking journey back into the past. They had quietly, methodically reopened a murder case that had stubbornly remained unsolved for an astonishing 45 years. It was a case like many cold files that had long haunted the local police force, a thick folder filled with faded reports, cryptic notes, and unanswered questions, a ghost in the annals of unsolved crimes. The true turning point in this enduring mystery, however, lay not in new witnesses or fresh leads, but in the rapid advancements of forensic science. DNA evidence, meticulously preserved from the original crime scene, despite the relentless erosion of time and the numerous hands it had passed through, had finally been subjected to the latest, most sophisticated analytical techniques. This precious biological material was then carefully compared to a vast public genetic genealogy database, a revolutionary investigative tool that had transformed cold case methodologies. This groundbreaking method, akin to drawing an intricate, detailed map through generations of human lineage, allowed investigators, in collaboration with pioneers like genetic genealogist C.C. Moore and companies such as Parabon Nanolabs, to trace a complex and extensive family tree. They meticulously connected distant relatives, following faint genetic breadcrumbs until the branches of the tree converged. This painstaking genealogical work, a blend of science and detective work, ultimately led them, with an undeniable and almost mathematical certainty, to John Arthur Getreu. He was a man who, on the surface, presented as an embodiment of ordinary American life, a devoted husband, a doting father, and a respected former Boy Scout leader, a picture of suburban normalcy. He was now, after nearly 5 decades of living an apparently unblemished life, identified as the primary suspect in a murder that had long defied resolution. Investigators, acutely aware of the sensitivity and historical weight of the case, meticulously prepared to bring him in for an extensive and probing questioning, hoping to peel back the layers of his seemingly innocuous existence and finally uncover the profound and unsettling truth that lay buried beneath. They sought to determine with absolute certainty if this seemingly respectable figure was simply a tragic case of mistaken identity, a man wrongly accused by an obscure thread of DNA, or if his carefully lived existence had in fact been a calculated and chilling cover for something far more sinister, a hidden life punctuated by unspeakable acts of violence. The weight of anticipation, tempered by methodical planning, hung heavy over the entire investigation team, a sense of nearing the culmination of a decades-long quest. The interrogation commenced within the sterile, unforgiving confines of a small, windowless interview room. The harsh fluorescent lights, recessed into the low ceiling, cast a stark, unwavering glow on the simple metal table and the 2 uncomfortable chairs, creating an environment designed to be devoid of distraction. The air was still, heavy with unspoken questions, the scent of antiseptic cleaner lingering faintly. A sergeant, whose demeanor was a careful blend of professionalism, quiet intensity, and calculated patience, began the proceedings by calmly informing John of the general reason for his presence. There was no immediate accusation, only a measured introduction to the situation. John, maintaining a remarkable composure that bordered on the unnerving, provided basic personal information with a steady voice, confirming his full name, his birth date of August 26, 1944, and revealing that he was born in Newark, Ohio. He spoke briefly of his early years, which were marked by frequent relocation due to his father's extensive and demanding military career. This nomadic childhood had led him to spend a significant part of his formative teenage years living in West Germany, specifically on a U.S. military base in Bad Kreuznach, a detail that, unbeknownst to him at that moment, would soon take on a profoundly chilling significance. The sergeant then, with a deliberate and subtle shift in tone, gently but persistently pressed him on his earlier claim of never having been arrested. John's outwardly calm demeanor subtly fractured. A momentary flicker of something unreadable, perhaps apprehension, perhaps a deep-seated weariness, crossed his features as he admitted to a past arrest, a dark incident from his youth in Germany. When prompted for further details, his words, though delivered without overt emotion, were chilling in their content. He had been accused of murder. This stark revelation, spoken so plainly, was particularly disquieting, given the very reason for his current presence in the interrogation room: accusations regarding a completely separate, equally grave murder. The chilling pattern of his life, stretching across continents and decades, was beginning to emerge. He recounted the accusation from his youth with a detached brevity, stating that he had killed a chaplain's daughter. He claimed to have no prior knowledge of the young female victim, a 15-year-old girl named Margaret L. Williams. The details of her last night were grim, pieced together from old German police reports. She had attended a dance at an American youth club on the evening of June 8, 1963, a seemingly innocent Saturday night outing. John, then just 18 years old and soon to graduate from Bad Kreuznach American High School, was also present. According to the original reports from that distant time, Margaret and John were said to have encountered each other on the street shortly after the dance concluded, and she had reportedly agreed to let him walk her home. Her lifeless body was tragically discovered the following morning, abandoned on a baseball diamond situated directly behind the youth club. The subsequent examination revealed the horrific truth. She had been sexually assaulted and then brutally strangled, a pattern that would chillingly repeat years later. Despite John's persistent maintenance of his innocence regarding this long-ago crime, stating emphatically that he didn't even know her, he had been found guilty at trial for Margaret's murder in June 1964. The German court had sentenced him to 10 years in a juvenile prison, the maximum sentence available under West German law at the time. Due to his age at the time of the conviction, he was granted release after serving approximately 2/3 of his sentence, a mere 6 years. He then walked free, a young man with a dark, unpunished past, and quietly returned to the United States. He was simply dropped off at McGuire Air Force Base, a nondescript transition point, where his father awaited him. That chapter, seemingly concluded and forgotten by many, allowed him to re-enter American society, the weight of his actions seemingly left behind on foreign soil. After returning to the United States, John eventually settled in California, seeking a new life, a fresh start in the burgeoning communities of the West Coast. He married his first wife, Susan, in Reno, Nevada, in 1970, and the couple soon relocated to Palo Alto, California, where they lived from 1971 to 1975. However, the shadow of his past, or perhaps a recurring, unaddressed compulsion, seemed to follow him. In 1975, just over a decade after his release from German prison, and after settling into what appeared to be a stable life, he found himself once again entangled in a serious criminal accusation. Investigators, now methodically probing his extensive history, brought up a past accusation from the Palo Alto Police Department regarding a sexual assault. John, who at that time was serving as a respected leader of an explorer post, a seemingly wholesome and community-oriented role, dismissed the accusation with a practiced nonchalance. He stated emphatically that nothing had happened, claiming he was merely accused, interviewed, without the case ever progressing to trial or requiring him to serve any time. He asserted, "I didn't serve any time that I know of. It was so piddly." Yet, the official records and multiple news sources from that period painted a different, more troubling picture. John, then 31 years old, had indeed faced a grave accusation from a 17-year-old female explorer scout who came forward. She claimed he not only assaulted and strangled her during the incident at her parents' Palo Alto home, but also threatened to kill her if she did not comply with his demands. Despite his denials and an initial plea of not guilty to charges of sexual perversion and rape by threat, he eventually accepted a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to statutory rape in June 1975. He reportedly received a 6-month sentence in county jail, though he ultimately served only 30 days, meticulously broken down into weekend stints, with 5 months suspended, along with a $200 fine and 2 years of probation. His first wife, Susan, divorced him following this conviction in 1978. These incidents, spaced across continents and years, began to form a disturbing and undeniable pattern in the carefully constructed narrative of John Arthur Getreu's life, hinting at a darker, persistent nature beneath the surface of normalcy. In 1978, he remarried, this time to a woman named Linda, who later died of cancer in 2003. He married a third time in 2008 and even held the position of exalted ruler at the Fremont Elks Lodge, a patriotic fraternal order, further solidifying his image as a respected community member. The sergeant then, with a carefully modulated voice that maintained its calm, unwavering tone, shifted the focus of the interrogation squarely to the current investigation, specifically the Palo Alto area and its surrounding hills, a region known for its sprawling nature preserves, winding roads, and popular hiking trails. John admitted to having traveled extensively through those hills during his time as a scout leader, a role that gave him intimate knowledge of the local topography and its secluded areas. However, he adamantly denied ever visiting the specific area around Page Mill Road, a winding route that traversed the rugged terrain just west of Stanford University. This denial was significant, as the sergeant then revealed the grim core of the current investigation. A murder had occurred in those very hills, a cold case that for decades had remained a haunting, unsolved mystery, now rekindled by the relentless pursuit of justice and the marvels of modern forensic science. The victim was identified as Leslie Marie Perlov, a vibrant and promising 21-year-old Stanford University graduate. In 1973, Leslie had been working diligently as a law clerk at a Palo Alto law firm, her future seemingly bright and full of unlimited potential. Her lifeless body had been tragically discovered 3 days after she went missing, on February 16, 1973, dumped beneath an oak tree in the remote and secluded Stanford dish hiking area, a scenic but isolated expanse of rolling hills that offered sweeping views of Silicon Valley below. A chilling detail had emerged from the original crime scene. A floral scarf, found tightly knotted around her neck, had been used as the ligature to brutally strangle her, leaving an indelible mark on the investigation. The crucial breakthrough in this decades-old case lay in the silent testimony of biological evidence. Seminal fluid found on Leslie's fully clothed corpse, meticulously preserved and stored for decades in a crime lab, had been subjected to the latest analytical techniques. A genotypic profile of the killer had been developed, and then, in July 2018, submitted to Parabon Nanolabs, a company specializing in advanced DNA phenotyping and genetic genealogy. Using advanced DNA testing in combination with innovative genetic analysis, sophisticated identification techniques, and traditional genealogical methods, the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit, in collaboration with Parabon, established a complex family tree. This painstaking work, analyzing hundreds of potential relatives from public genealogy sites, led them directly to John Arthur Getreu. At the time of Leslie's murder, he had been employed as a security guard, a position that placed him in close proximity to the Stanford campus, the very area where Leslie lived and worked, and the site of her final moments. John, maintaining his impassive demeanor throughout the questioning, denied any knowledge of Leslie or recognizing her photograph when it was presented to him. He also denied ever stopping by her distinctive orange Chevrolet Nova, which had been found abandoned at the gate of an old quarry located near the intersection of Old Page Mill Road and Page Mill Road, just east of where her body was discovered. His denials, though firm, were delivered with a peculiar lack of conviction, a subtle disassociation from the grim facts of the case. A curious and profoundly revealing slip then occurred during the meticulous interrogation. When discussing Leslie, John inadvertently mentioned her as a Stanford graduate, even though the sergeant had carefully withheld that specific detail, only referring to her ambiguously as a college kid. he attempted to cover this telling slip, attributing his comment to her overall appearance and the general environment of the area. The sergeant, keenly aware of this telling detail, allowed the moment to pass without immediate challenge, observing John's reaction with professional detachment. When asked if he had ever contemplated committing such horrific acts as murder or sexual assault, John denied it with a flat nope, stating he had no reason for it. Pressed further about the possibility of his DNA being found on Leslie, he claimed to have not the slightest idea why it would be there, maintaining his consistent denial of any involvement in her murder. He attempted to articulate his rudimentary understanding of DNA transfer, vaguely suggesting it came from semen or the mouth, indicating a basic yet oddly specific awareness of how such incriminating evidence might be found. He then made a chilling, almost prescient remark about the advancing capabilities of technology, stating, "Technology is getting good. They're catching them every day," unaware that he was speaking of his own impending fate. As the relentless interrogation continued, a crucial error began to emerge from John's carefully constructed narrative of denial, a thread that would unravel his entire story. The sergeant, subtly leading the conversation, made a seemingly innocuous reference to these two persons whose DNA might be connected to the ongoing case. Without hesitation, John immediately responded with, "What two persons?" This was a profound and undeniable misstep. The sergeant had, up to that point, only specifically mentioned one victim, Leslie. John's immediate question implicitly and undeniably revealed an awareness of a second victim, a critical detail the police had not yet confirmed to him in the interrogation room. The sergeant then carefully clarified that he was referring to the two young women, one of whom was up on the hill, Leslie. John's subsequent response, asking wherever the second girl was, before the sergeant had even confirmed the existence of a second victim or her specific location, undeniably confirmed his prior knowledge of another, unmentioned case. He then vaguely suggested they were two people, two girls, killed within possibly an hour of each other, or day or 2 hours, indicating a shockingly close time frame for the murders, further solidifying the investigator's certainty that he was indeed responsible for both the Stanford Dish killings. Unbeknownst to the interrogating sergeant at that precise moment in the interview, John's slip had pointed to a horrific and long-hidden truth. Indeed, another young woman had been tragically found deceased in the Palo Alto area in 1974, just 1 year after Leslie's body was discovered. 21-year-old Janet Ann Taylor, a Cañada College student and the daughter of former Stanford football coach and athletic director Chuck Taylor, had been found dumped along Sand Hill Road, within the same Stanford Dish hiking area where Leslie's remains were found. She had last been seen on March 24, 1974, attempting to hitchhike home to La Honda from the Cañada College campus. Her body was discovered the following day, March 25, 1974, in a roadside ditch near Sand Hill Road and Manzanita Way. According to contemporary news sources and official reports, Janet had also been sexually assaulted and brutally strangled to death, mirroring Leslie's grim fate. The initial police investigation, led by the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, had concluded that while she was not raped, there was clear evidence of sexual motivation for the crime, and her death was due to strangulation by ligature. The serial killer responsible for the deaths of both Leslie Perlov and Janet Taylor had managed to evade justice for decades, disappearing into the fabric of ordinary life, living as a respectable community member until the relentless march of forensic science, specifically the new advancements in genetic genealogy, finally caught up. In 2017, San Mateo County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit detectives reinitiated the investigation into Miss Taylor's murder, working in conjunction with Santa Clara County investigators. Evidence from the Taylor case, including DNA from her clothing, was submitted for forensic analysis. On January 3, 2019, a partial male DNA profile was obtained and definitively matched with John Getreu, who was already in custody for Leslie Perlov's murder. The atmosphere in the interrogation room grew progressively heavier, the air thick with the palpable weight of decades of unspoken truth. Finally, under the relentless yet calm and methodical pressure of the investigators, John's carefully constructed facade began to fully crumble. With a sigh that seemed to carry the immense burden of years of concealment, he declared, "I think I'm at a point in my investigation that I'm guilty, and that's it." This admission, though partial and delivered with a detached resignation, was a profound and long-awaited breakthrough. The sergeant pressed him further, explaining that with his irrefutable DNA found on the victim, confirmed by independent laboratory testing on November 9, 2018, which showed a probability of a random, unrelated individual being a contributor as approximately 1 in 65 septillion, the focus of the investigation was no longer about who committed the crime, but why. John initially resisted, denying deeper knowledge, but under the firm, unwavering pressure from another investigator who joined the interrogation, his carefully constructed web of lies tore apart completely. The investigator asserted with calm authority that the type and precise location of John's DNA on the victim left no other explanation. He committed the crime. They stated, "We know you committed this crime. What we don't know is why, and we're going to give you the opportunity to explain it to us." John, after a moment of heavy reflective silence, almost to himself, uttered a chilling statement that resonated with a strange blend of acceptance and bitter curiosity. "Yeah, I knew that, but why it took so damn long." This brief remark was a stark and startling admission of his long-held secret, a morbid wonder about the protracted delay of justice and his surprising ability to remain hidden for so long. As the investigators pushed harder for the truth about Leslie Perlov, demanding an explanation for her murder, John once again inadvertently confirmed his involvement with a second victim. When asked directly why Leslie, he responded, with a subtle shift in his gaze, "If that's the first girl, or the one girl that's up on the hill, or whatever," leading the investigators to press him on what he meant by the first girl. He then spoke of two people, two girls, suggesting they were killed within an hour of each other, or a day or 2 hours, indicating a shockingly close time frame for the murders, further solidifying the investigator's certainty that he was indeed responsible for both the Stanford Dish killings. During the trial for Janet Taylor, the jury also heard about Getreu's disturbing and predatory patterns, including testimony about his repeated sexual assaults on his stepdaughter between 1970 and 1977, and his raping and threatening to kill a 17-year-old girl participating in a youth program where Getreu volunteered, providing a deeper and more chilling understanding of his long-standing history of violence. In a final, decisive confrontation, investigators laid out the unassailable evidence against him, meticulously connecting his disturbing past to his present actions, crime by brutal crime. They highlighted the stark, impossible coincidence: a 15-year-old girl tragically dead in Germany when he was young, and years later, after returning to the States, 2 more young women found dead with his DNA undeniably present in the very same secluded area. "What do you think the chances are of that happening?" the sergeant asked, allowing the immense weight of the question, echoing with the silent voices of the victims, to settle in the silent room. John, cornered and with no further means of evasion or denial, his long-held secret finally exposed, stated, with a tone of quiet resignation, "I'm going to put the questioning from here on, unless I'm representative by somebody in the courts." With that, He clearly and definitively requested legal representation. "I'd like a lawyer." The interrogation came to an abrupt end, the tape recorder clicking off, signaling the close of a long and arduous pursuit of truth that had spanned continents and generations. Justice, though agonizingly delayed for decades, swiftly caught up with 74-year-old John Arthur Getreu. On November 20th, 2018, he was formally arrested at his home in Hayward, California, and booked into the Santa Clara County Main Jail, facing a staggering $10 million bond. The scientific evidence against him continued to mount with irrefutable certainty. In January 2019, DNA from the torn crotch of Janet Taylor's pants, a crucial piece of evidence, was also definitively determined to be a match for John. The weight of the evidence became overwhelming and undeniable. In late 2021, Getreu's trial for the murder of Janet Taylor began in San Mateo County and lasted 3 weeks. On September 15, 2021, a jury, after hearing the meticulously presented case, found him guilty on all counts of first-degree murder with infliction of great bodily injury in the brutal killing of Janet Taylor. He was sentenced to 7 years to life in prison, finally putting a serial killer who had escaped justice for decades behind bars for good. The long shadow he had cast over these cold cases, the Stanford murders as they became known, finally began to recede. Due to his rapidly failing health, which necessitated multiple hospital visits and weakened his ability to attend court in person, the trial for Leslie Perlov's murder was suspended in late 2022, forcing the 78-year-old Getreu to attend court proceedings from his hospital room via video link. In January 2023, Getreu, facing the inevitable and perhaps seeking a measure of finality, pleaded guilty to the murder of Leslie Perlov, admitting that he had killed her after she resisted his attempts to rape her. He received a second life sentence to be served consecutively with the first, ensuring that his remaining years would be spent within the confines of a prison cell. According to multiple news sources, John Arthur Getreu died of natural causes on September 22, 2023, at the age of 79, while serving his sentence at the California Healthcare Facility, a state prison in Stockton that provides medical care to inmates. Though his life ended behind bars, his legacy continues to contribute to the ongoing pursuit of justice for other victims. His DNA remains securely within the state database, a silent, enduring record of his predatory past. It will continue to be regularly compared against evidence from other unsolved rapes and murders across the region, including cases such as the 1969 attempted murder of Sharon Lucchese in San Jose and the 1980 murder of Teresa Smith in Ohio, aiding in the relentless and ongoing effort to bring closure to more cases and finally reveal the long-hidden truths of the past. The long reach of forensic science ensures that even decades later, the fading footprints of crime, no matter how obscured by time, can still lead to justice and, for the victims' families, a measure of peace.